Hi folks, Canadian Prepper here, trying to get the dog in the frame without the gratuitous crotch shot that I'm sure some people wouldn't mind, but most people might take offense to, so we're going to try to spare you this time. Looks like Marshall's in a good part of the frame here for that. Good boy, Marshall, good boy. Guys, if there's one thing that people take away from this channel, just one thing, it's, how can I say this in the most non-politically charged way possible? Because as many of you know, I'm very moderate to the core. The government is going to do what's right for the government. End of story, period, point blank. But no matter how many times that is demonstrated throughout history, even though it was just demonstrated, a classic example that we are going to talk about in the next 5 minutes, it was just demonstrated so explicitly, people are still going to fall for the same old tricks. And let me just make this clear. I understand where the government's coming from. Okay, I used to work in middle management. Now I'm in management. I get it. I get that you have to do what's right for the greater good. You must tell the noble lie. Maybe that's what I will title this video as. The noble lie is important. It serves a purpose to ensure the greater good. Unfortunately, if you're any self-respecting individual, you will think for yourself in times of crisis. Because in times of crisis, the government, when the going gets tough, the tough get authoritarian. And that's all there is to it. This was proven in Kiev. There is no better example in recent history than what has happened in Ukraine. And they blatantly, talk about it. They blatantly admit to it, that they lied to their people about the Russians invading. The spokesperson for the Zelensky government came out and said in an interview, and you could pretty much put this in exact quotes, "We didn't want to start a panic. We didn't want to create gridlock because our military would not be able to counteract the Russian threat." From a managerial standpoint, I understand it. From a person who owns a business, I understand why you must tell the noble lie, why you must do what's best for the greater good, why you must be authoritative in some instances, why you must fire people in some cases, why you must have rules. But as individuals, as the people who got trapped, literally trapped there, and were forced to be conscripted against their will, because they were lied to, essentially lied to. If there's anything you take away from this channel, it's this, is that is what will happen here. It's because everything about that country is being propped up by our countries. So they are a shining example of what we can expect. In fact, we were all told the noble lie 2 years ago. You remember? Masks don't work. What other way? There was countless lies around the whole pandemic, okay? And we were told this for our own good because they did the math, the actuarial scientists, okay, if we say this, then this many people will die. If we say this, this many people will die. So we won't say this, but still quite a few people are going to die, right? Now, this is very, very unsettling, very, very unnerving to know that we will not be told exactly what is going on. And this bears repeating every single day. People must constantly be aware of this fact. And like I said, this is doesn't stem from some, I hate how conservatism is what's been pegged as the anti-government party. Because to me, left or right, it doesn't matter. You should always be critical of authority. And typically the left has been critical of authority. Most of the progressive movement is anti-authoritarian in a lot of ways. It's just that now, because they have kind of taken over essentially, and if you guys want to know a little sidebar here, the reason why the progressives are, and the reason why society becomes more and more progressive, is because the progressive are the artists, and the artists are the avant-garde of culture, and as such, they create the future. So, you may laugh at the blue-haired, purple-haired, whatever now, who's screaming on the street corner, but they inject the seeds of culture that take root in the future. Right now, they just look like a quack. But down the line, all of those mannerisms become integrated into the culture, and they become normalized in the culture. Anyways, that's just a little sidebar, little side piece of wisdom for you guys, all right? That is why they own the future, because most conservatives are, fairly content just doing what they do, just working hard, getting by, trying to pay as little taxes as possible, because, why would you want to pay tax to an incompetent government? But the fact of the matter is the artists are the ones that rule the future. The conservatives rule today. You can put that on a t-shirt if you want. Right now, what's going on in Shanghai is very, very unsettling. It's incredibly unsettling. I don't know what is going on there. All I know is that it appears that they're trying to prove a point. I watched a 15-minute video of people shouting from buildings, beating pots and pans, pleading with the authorities, fighting with the authorities for some food, guys fishing with drones, literally trying to fish with drones to get food, people, clamoring for food through fences because they can only get food in certain districts because areas are cordoned off, and it's just it's incredibly bizarre what is going on there right now. And I can only suspect that the reason for it is to test the limits of what people will accept. Here, we got to the point where, while there in the States, you guys got to January 6th. That was a limit, right? Here we got to the trucker thing. That was a limit. In Shanghai, they're still pushing it. They're seeing how far they can go. Can we get people to starve in their homes? And I'm not saying that they're trying to starve. A lot of people jump right away to, they're trying to, population control. Look, the Chinese population is going to be halved in, like a few generations or so, because of the fact that there's not as many women to mate with the guys, because, the one-child policy of old. That's why they brought back the two-child policy. So it's not about depopulation, guys. It really isn't. It's about control. That's what it's about. And how does this relate to the Kiev situation? Because in the same manner, and I was very suspicious of this when they did this, because you remember when they imposed the curfew and the lockdown in Kiev after the Russians had invaded? And I understand why they did it, because, there's a great potential for sabotage in that city, and but then they started passing out guns to people, and it just struck me as weird. It was such a perfectly seamless transition from the COVID lockdowns to this new war-imposed curfew. It was perfect because everybody already knew what to do, right? Everybody was already accustomed to staying in their homes. And it got me thinking, there was a YouTube channel in here. I can't remember what his name was, but he had made a video, some ways into the pandemic, maybe a few months. And he had said, if there was a war coming, I would want to get people trained to go into lockdown, to get into their homes and to shut the hell up so the government can do what they have to do, so that people aren't gridlocking the streets. And it never occurred to me until I heard that statement by the spokesperson for the Kiev government that it makes perfect sense. That if the shit was going to go down, and I actually made a video about this last year, sort of, where I talked about why I felt that, we have big changes coming for humanity, and that the lockdowns, actually it was 2 years ago now, 2 summers ago, holy cow, time went by, didn't it? Wow. How we're getting ready, we're getting prepared, we're getting trained to be put under lock and key. And they're seeing how much we will take. And again, I don't mean this in, classic government is just, nefarious, plotting our demise type thing. I think that the government legitimately is practicing the noble lie, because they feel what they're doing is, they're doing it like using it from like an actuarial scientist perspective, where they're saying, okay, this many people will die if we do this. This many will die if we do this. So we need to do this. A lot of people are going to die, but we need to deprive people of their individual rights and freedoms to, hopefully, reduce the amount of deaths overall. So this is why I cannot emphasize enough. If there's something that you take from this channel, if you run with and you shout it from the rooftops, it's that in times of crisis, when that emergency broadcast system comes on, virtually everything that comes out of that system now is going to be incredibly suspect. I mean, this situation right now has proven and bared that out, that we cannot trust our authorities to tell us the truth about what is going on, because they're going to act in accordance with their own interests as representative of our own interests. And by that I mean that, yes, the Kiev government, whether you feel they were legitimate or they were a puppet or color revolution, government that was put in power or not, I mean, in their mind, they're the legitimate government of that country, and thus to preserve their country and their countrymen, they must also preserve their government. So those two things are what they're trying to preserve, as opposed to just trying to preserve, the good of the people, which in many cases, if that was the case, maybe peace talks would have been moved along far more than they are right now, because clearly a lot of people are being sent to the slaughterhouse for the greater good. China is way further ahead in terms of their complacency than we are. But then again, we don't know exactly what is going on there, because a lot of the media, the Great Firewall, prevents a lot of videos and stuff from getting leaked. So we don't know the real level of resistance. We're seeing some videos of scuffles in the streets, but sooner or later, people are going to reach a breaking point. Okay. Now, some people have suspected that this could be related to the food shortages. We know that China has a 1.5 year long surplus of food, meaning that if they were to stop producing or importing food today, the food that they have on hand would feed their population for 18 months. There is no other country in the world that has as great of a surplus as that. Actually, I don't even think the US does. I know the global average is 3 months. But this is incredibly high for China, who, of course, has a population of like 1.5 billion people, the biggest population of people on the planet. So we know that, and this just is so bizarre. Like by this point, even with respect to the vaccine, I mean, clearly this is a sign that either that is wholly ineffective, if they're still at that level of lockdown, or the ones that they're using, I'm saying, if that is what is required at this point, or there's a new virus that's going around, or they are training for a biological warfare. I mean, that's a possibility too. They are training their population to endure a biological warfare scenario. Because what is the best way to preserve infrastructure? A neutron bomb? Sure, maybe. But realistically, we're talking about something which can get rid of people, but preserve the infrastructure, or preserve enough of it to weaken economies. What happened to the US economy throughout the vid? Whatever happened wasn't good. We all know that. And what happened to the Chinese economy throughout the vid? It actually grew. Okay. There was a few hiccups, and now, of course, they're struggling with more hiccups. But on the whole, who was hurt more by this? It was the least authoritarian regime. See, during good times, during times of globalism and global trade, capitalist societies, they're the ones that make out like bandits. They do the best, hands down. During times of crisis and disaster, as the Chinese always say, disaster is opportunity. And in times of crisis, authoritarian regimes are the ones that are able to thrive because they can lock the population down without any resistance or with mild resistance. Here, that kind of thing would not fly. To be locked down while people are starving, could you imagine the chaos in the streets? We seen chaos in lockdowns in LA, in Santa Monica. People were rioting in the streets for shoes. Imagine if people were starving, what they would do in our society. It would be crazy. It would be chaos. Okay, and everybody's got guns, which makes it, better or worse depending on which side of the fence of that debate you're on. Obviously, you guys know I'm pro-gun, but it's not looking good. Now, I'm going to be releasing a video tomorrow because there's a lot of people who are still in denial and think this World War III stuff is just a game and it's never going to happen and they'll never, Yeah, that's why they're spending billions and billions and trillions of dollars on the military. Anyways, we're going to save that for tomorrow because that's another thorn in my side in the comments. People who are in a constant state of denial about the world that we are living in and human nature. I've talked about ad nauseum how susceptible people are to, peer pressure, to groupthink, to social coercion. People can do incredibly heinous things when under the thumb or when under the iron fist, I should say. People are capable of incredible atrocities, that most people don't even realize themselves what they're capable of because they've never had a gun to their head. Okay, so 90% of people we know from some of the most, you're going to have to forgive me, it's a little late, some of the most replicated scientific studies that 90% of people will be pushed to commit atrocities when they are told that they will not be held accountable, when they will be told that the responsibility for those actions will be taken upon a greater authority. Don't worry, we'll take the blame. You just go do the thing. Go do that bad thing. Go send those people over to that chamber over there and just don't worry about it. It's our fault, Guys, the future is looking scarier and scarier as the days go by because if the last 2.5 years has showed me anything, and it's stuff that we all kind of knew hypothetically, but to see it played out in so blatantly is really terrifying. I mean, just really think about it. They lied to their people and said there's not going to be a war so that they could, more effectively fight the war. But how many people were trapped, killed, forced to join the military? The reality of what they did is startling. And I made that video about the normalcy bias. And it's no surprise to me now that it never really took off. Because in spite of that, they explicitly came out and said they lied to their population. And crickets. 90% of people are going to go back to the cathedral again tomorrow of mainstream media and believe. It doesn't matter what. They can lie, and people have such a short-term memory. It's literally like a psychological limitation or something that we have, that most people have such a short-term memory that the power of social persuasion is, how it overrides what you objectively know to be true. It's just insane to me. And really, to truly be awake, all you need to do is view things objectively. That's it. If you are viewing the world through an objective lens and remembering more than what happened a week ago. Like if you can remember that the government just lied to us a week ago and that maybe they shouldn't be trusted now, you are really way ahead of the game, because 90% of people simply aren't doing that. Or if they are, they're not verbalizing it. And I'm sure they are, but I'm sure they're just, they feel the social pressure to not be that guy at the family reunion. And I get it. You don't want to be that person. You don't want to be that person who's, saying that's talking like this to, a table full of people who are just trying to enjoy their dinner. I get it. But, it's astonishing because where this ends is not a good place. This ends in compliance. This ends in a lot of people who might otherwise have a chance at surviving a crisis, who will have that taken from them because they will be told the noble lie. And sometimes I wish I was just a dog and I didn't have to think about these things. Hey, Marshall? It's shedding season. I'm full of hair. Anyways, I've rambled on long enough. This has just been a Deep Thoughts by Canadian Prepper. Thanks for watching, guys. Stay safe. Canadian Prepper out.